Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks for making your way here, for checking out the series. Of course, you know what to do if you like what you see, what you hear. Hit that subscribe button. I put out new interviews just like this one every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I could not be more excited to have one of the greatest. Jeff Bridges is here. Hello, sir.
Hey there, Kyle. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's so great to see you. It's so great to be
Good.
talking music. I should say, and I forgot to mention this in our small talk beforehand, but we met once briefly in Colorado. You were promoting your self-titled album, your T-Bone album,
Ah,
and you stopped by a little radio convention, and we got to say hi. And that song that was the single, "Little Bit of Love," is still a song that we play here at WFPK. It's still a song that I have in my head all the time.
oh, good. Yeah,
So,
that's a Stephen Bruton tune.
yeah.
One of T-Bone's oldest friends and a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that we actually get to talk about some music again because you've got this special release coming out on Record Store Day called Slow Magic 1977 and 1978. And this finds a young Jeff Bridges in let me say, I don't know what to call this because it sounds like you guys were messing around and came out with this amazing record that just went unheard for so long. What is the story of this? Because this finds you in what, 1977, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can kind of truncate the story because it could be kind of a long one. Let me just mention this fella, Keithus Chancia, who I met actually on that album that you just referenced, the T-Bone album that I did. And he was one of Keybone's wonderful musicians that he brought on board. And then Keithus and I became fast friends. We did something called sleeping tapes together. Do you know about
Mhm. I
that?
know about sleeping tapes. Yeah, of
All
course.
right. So I won't, that can, somebody, if they're interested in it, they can Google sleeping tapes and see what that's all about. And then we had several, encounters. We did something called Life is But a Dream, which is a wonderful. I say wonderful because it was one of my favorite things I've ever been involved in. Uh, a uh, a video that is accompanies sleeping tapes, and then anyway, we had another session a few years back where Keith said, "Yeah, bring some of your tunes. Let's go into a studio and see what happens." So I brought a pile of tunes, and some of them was this little cassette that I had from this time that played all this music with my old high school buddies back in the 70s. And he fell in love with this cassette. And without telling me, he sent it to Matt Sullivan, the head of uh, uh,
Light in the
Light in
Attic.
the Attic. Yeah,
Yeah.
this outfit that is specializes in archival music.
Mhm.
And he dug it too. Matt dug it too. And so I get this call. I said, "Hey, you want to make an album of this?" I said, "What are you talking about, man? This all this rough thing filled with clams and they said, "Yeah, we're loving it." I said, "Okay." So I signed off on it being done, and it just proved to be so much fun and connected me with all these old friends,
Yeah.
from 50 years ago. So it was a terrific experience.
Well, it's really interesting that because when you're so close to the something like this, when you're so close to a song, you obviously don't hear it how other people hear it, you know.
Yeah,
For a lot of songs, musicians are like, "Oh, that's unfinished," and and the listeners like, "Don't touch it. It's
yeah,
perfect." Like
yeah,
you didn't hear this as an album. When I heard this, it was
yeah.
perfect.
I love that. That's a wonderful life lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. So take us back. What are you doing? What's life like in 1977, 78? Like how did these songs and tapes come to be?
Yeah, well, go back, I graduated high school the summer of love, 67. And shortly after that, my friend Steve Bain would have these jams over at his house. And there was one rule to the jam that no songs were allowed. You couldn't bring any, pre-written songs. But singing and improvisation was certainly encouraged. And just the excitement of getting together, feeling all of that camaraderie of being a band, although we weren't officially a band because the people who were at the jams were constantly changing. There was a core, a few guys, but basically it was an open-ended thing. But even though there were no songs allowed and this improvisation was encouraged, I was writing songs at that time, and I would be inspired by what came up in those jams and would write songs. That opening tune, Obnoxious, that was, I think, inspired. I was looking at an old documentary film from one of the jams, and we did this obnoxious kind of thing. And so it's happened. This is so long ago, half a century ago.
Right.
I can't remember half of this stuff. One of the fun things about the whole project was it was so long ago, and my mind, I can't remember much these days anyway. It was like Rashomon, where there were all these different versions of what actually happened.
Mhm.
So who knows really what went down? I don't know. But the record is some kind of, semi-concrete thing. But like you say, everybody interprets that different
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. It's like you hear these songs. I mean, you bring up Obnoxious because it's got this, um, what I want to say, kind of a wider shade of pale type of feel to it, I guess is what I'm getting. It's that feel. Like these are chords that people don't use anymore. I mean, modern day songwriters, and I miss these, So hearing something that still has that sort of bass
Yeah.
to it,
Well,
the
it's the doo-wop chords,
yeah,
that C, A minor, You play guitar.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
Yeah, so you know that progression.
right, right, yeah. That's what I said,
And
and
that's
it's
basically it's a doo-wop too.
yeah. So you all are improving these? Is that what you're basically saying? Like most of these
No,
just come
no,
from
no, no,
improvs?
no. This was all stuff that I wrote.
Okay, okay. I was trying to
But
figure out the connection back and forth.
yeah,
Right.
it was inspired by, like I might, see I might have had a jam session. I don't know exactly how this, but on the
Mhm.
mats and perhaps in a jam we would say, "Yeah, I'm noxious." We would talk about that.
Yeah.
And I would go home and, you know, somehow conjure up my version of that. And then I would invite the jam guys to come and play it. But at the actual Wednesday night jams, no songs
No
allowed.
songs there. I see. I see. So when you listen back to these and for what you can remember from that time, of being a musician, like I would expect by this point, like do you think you found your voice? Do you hear that you're still in the emulation phase of songwriting?
Well, one of the things that the Wednesday night jams encouraged was kind of this authenticity, the you're what you're considering imperfect is actually your version of perfection. It's so that idea was a freeing one. So I wasn't really trying to sing in any way other than myself. But I'm sure I was influenced by what was around me. I mean that you can't
Sure.
help.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the track list over here, like Slow Magic. Like talk about a song that's all the way there. That's
Really? Oh, that's so interesting because I've done something recently, maybe a few years ago. Oh, or maybe not. I can't. Time is funny, but when I was sick and when we were on strike and stuff, this idea started to emerge. And the title of it was Emergent Behavior. And I was into this idea of what emergent behavior is. I won't get into it too much right now, but what occurred was me going back into my music mind. I call it like looking for diamonds, and you say, "Oh, this old song," and I decided to release these songs with some kind of visual aspect to them and put them out. And one of the songs, I didn't even know that this song came back from the 70s, was Slow Magic.
Hmm.
So there's a version of Slow Magic, but a more up-to-date one. And I'm not even sure if the kind of the punchline to that song is in the 77 version, which is slow magic when you see how the trick is done. That's like it's like if a magician, is doing sleight of hand and you say, "Oh, that's where it's hidden,"
Right.
like that. And every once in a while in life, we're allowed to be privy to the magic trick that's going down.
Yeah. Do you find yourself impressed with your younger self? I'll preface that by saying I had the honor once of having Paul McCartney on here, and he was saying, when he listens back to Eleanor Rigby, it blows his mind how he could have written those lyrics, you know.
Yeah, man. Well, the best, uh, you know, I look at all the different creative aspects that I'm involved in, whether it's acting, photography, painting, music, photography. The task is to get out of the way and let this thing come through you and do you. When you're not doing it, but it's doing you, there's nothing sweeter than that, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I also you got Burgess Meredith on here.
Yeah.
Um Sounding like William Burroughs, I may add. I had to double
Uh,
check that track list.
isn't that a beautiful poem? His
That
poem.
is.
That's the highlight of the album, I think. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Take us back there. You all had been working together.
Well, uh, Burgess directed, wrote, and produced my second film, which is a movie called The Yin and Yang of Mr. Go. James Mason plays a Chinese Mexican in it. I mean, it's a very bizarre movie, but it was, I was like 19 years old. We're in Hong Kong with all these great guys. I mean, it's a
Uh-huh.
long story. It might be too long to tell, but we had an incredible time together. And we stayed friends. He turned me on to John Lilly, who's the guy who invented the isolation tank, and we did a lot of isolation tank work together. And then when I the song Kong, when I was in the middle of making that movie, the De Laurentiis Kong, and Dino called me into his office and wanted me to consider Kong 2, the sequel. And I got my mind going. We hadn't shot the end of the original Kong, that we were telling the story, and my mind started to go. I said, what if this giant ape falls off the Twin Towers, crashes on the ground, and it turns out that it's a machine, that all its blood is so-called blood is no, it's oil or something, it's all in flames. And what is going on? And we end the first movie there. And then the sequel would be that Chuck Grodin's character buys the carcass of this ape and starts to take it around. And of course, it's this mystery about where did this, because all these natives were on this island and they had been worshiping this giant gorilla for hundreds of years. What is going on? And the religions would be formed around it. What's going on? And then in the climax of Kong Part Two would be the aliens coming back to retrieve their being. But Dino just looked at me kind of like this. When I told him this story.
So it goes into a song, Lucky Us.
Yeah,
Lucky
yeah,
Us.
but I thought, oh no, yeah, I'm going to do a tune. So I wrote this tune that expresses that, and then who else could that I knew could be better than doing the Hindenburg, because that's based on that
Uh-huh.
Hindenburg disaster thing, than Burgess. And then Burgess, on that same date, he said, "Hey, do you mind if I recite a poem?" I said, "No, go, man." And so that's the take, first take,
Wow.
all together in the room together.
It's incredible. It really
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Uh, have so I've asked this question to other actor musicians before. You did it with Kong. Has that ever happened again throughout your career? Have you ever written a song from a character's point of view, one of your own character's point of view?
yeah, yeah. I wrote a tune that didn't make the movie uh, with T-Bone
Hmm.
when we did Crazy Heart. There's a tune that's mentioned in the novel, Slow Boat, but it's never. And I started to write this song, Slow Boat. I think it's on some of my albums, either the live album that I did, or might have been on. No, I think it's on the album that I did with T-Bone too. The Jeff
Hmm.
Bridges, I think is the title, Slow Boat. And I remember it, one of those songs, every once in a while, a song will just spill out like that. And I remember calling T-Bone and said, "Look what happened, man." And he goes, "Oh, I like that." And he put some had some chords to put to it. And boom, that song just, manifested right away.
Yeah, and that magical when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hang on for dear life. That's looking at even the parallels of that songwriting, and of course your work. I was just watching The Old Man um, talk about, we're talking about poetry. You get a script like that, that's one of the most poetic shows I feel like I've watched in a long time.
Oh,
Yeah.
glad you dug that.
Well, that's what, so when you're, songwriter, whatever, but even like hell, Tron, your character has all this, poetry coming up. Like, do you find yourself attracted to that kind of script? Do you go looking for scripts like that, or do they sort of find you?
Well, I have a funny mode of operation. I resist life to a great degree. It's funny because I aspire the exact opposite, but I put up a lot of resistance to the movies I make because I know what it entails. It entails me not doing a lot of other stuff that I want to do, like making music, being with my family.
Mhm.
That's one of the downsides, I think, of my career has been I've been away from my family and my kids more than I, wish I hadn't been. And that thought even took me away from your question. What's your question again?
I'm really talking about kind of the poetry of the
Oh,
type of
oh, oh,
scripts you
yeah,
land on. Yeah.
the choices. And yeah, a lot of my choices, like I resist. For instance, Crazy Heart, good example of it. Scott Cooper, one of my favorite directors of all time. That was his first film, if you can imagine.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
He wrote it and directed it. And he had sent it to me, years before it came out. And I read the script. I said, "Oh, because I always wanted to do a movie about, being a musician, how great." But there was no music attached to it, no songs. So
Mhm.
I said, "Well, I like the story, but there's no songs, and that's a problem." And then I'm walking down the street, and out of nowhere, I meet my old buddy T-Bone, and he says, "What do you think about this script, Crazy Heart?" I said, "Well, there's no music to it, man." And he goes, "Oh, that's the easy part." I said, "What are you talking about? Are you interested in doing it?" He says, "Well, I'll do it if you'll do it." Uh-oh. Now it's got to move out of the dream land into real life, and while it's in the dream world, you 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 don't have to worry about failure
Mhm.
pulling off this thing that you want to pull off so bad. But here's the opportunity to bring it into reality, and the opportunity was too wonderful to pass. So I jumped in and risked it. That tune on the album, "You Could Be Ready."
Mhm.
That feeling. That's a common feeling for me, and I think for a lot of people, that we're not enough. We don't know our shit enough. We're not prepared enough. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough enlightenment. We're not trained enough. these thoughts can really hold us down and keep us from kind of transcending our thoughts about ourselves.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I resist that shit, man. I
Did
resist
you
it.
did you resist what about Masking Anonymous? Because I would imagine you say yes to
Oh,
that.
that was pretty, that getting a chance to hang with Bob. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm glad you bring that up because not too many people have seen that
Oh,
movie.
anytime there's a movie and Bob Dylan attached to it,
Oh
like
man, you're
that's my
there.
lane right there. That's
Oh
weird
man. Oh,
and
what
musical.
a great actor,
Yeah.
God. When I look at what is it? Billy the Kid,
Hmm.
what is it called? What's the movie called?
Yeah, with from the
Yeah,
70s. Yeah.
yeah.
God, now I'm doing it
Pat,
too.
Pat Garrett and the
Pat
Billy the
Garrett.
Kid. And
Thank
of
you.
course, Christopherson did a fine job,
Uh-huh.
but I keep looking, I say, Bob should have played Billy. He looks just like that picture, that famous picture of him.
Uh-huh.
But gosh, working with Bob as an actor and having him knock on my trailer door said, "Hey, you want to pick?" Come on.
How do you do that? Like, I know we all got heroes and we humanize them and all that stuff, but still, you sit down and Bob says, "You want to pick?" Like, I guess.
my hand, my hands were shaking. Oh, God. We played one of my dear friend, John Goodwin, who is a guy that we go back to the fourth grade together. And when my band, the Abiders, go out, we play a lot of John. So I played one of his tunes, and then I played that great tune that Bob does, "You Belong to Me." You know that tune
Yeah, I know that song. Yeah.
from Natural Born Killers.
Yeah.
His version of it is so beautiful. Him playing guitar, and that's it, man. And I love his rendition of all those tunes from the American Songbook.
Hmm.
That's so his interpretation, wonderful.
Yeah. That's a triple album, which was really 5 albums that he put
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of that
yeah.
stuff right there. Man, you've had those moments too. I mean, what Bridge School, you playing Bridge School with Nico. Did you get to jam with Neil around that time?
No, we didn't jam.
That's too bad.
I met him. That was great. Yeah, that was a tour that T-Bone put together. Elvis Costello,
Mhm.
Leon Russell, the Punch Brothers, John Mellencamp, God, Elton John. I mean, what a bunch of guys to play with.
What a
Wow.
bunch of, that's an understatement. What a bunch of guys to play with. No, that's incredible. So the collection comes out on Record Store Day. You've dropped some singles here and there on the on your websites. I know you've been putting those out. I mean,
Have I? Oh, I haven't checked that out. I
it's been
got,
a bit, but they were out there since the
yeah.
last album, I should say.
Oh, good.
Um, like do you learn these old songs and take them out on the road?
I might. I mean, I revisit them shortly. Often. But you never. I don't know what's going to happen with me musically, or with any as far as anything goes. What's going to happen? I've got a guitar sitting here. I pick it up and play some tunes I'm working on. Some are mine. Some I'm working on a Leonard Cohen tune right now. Some old tunes. Just letting it kind of have its way with me.
Not a bad way to do it. I know we'll see in some stuff too. Of course, we mentioned Tron earlier. I'm excited to see that. I mean, who saw that
Yeah,
coming as a franchise? That's
isn't that wild? And talk about a multi-talented cat. I mean, Jared Leto. I mean,
mhm.
I don't know. Was he more famous as a musician now or as an
I've had
actor?
him on this show multiple times as both ways.
Like
That's
he's a wonderful guy. I really enjoyed playing with him. He was fun.
yeah, that's it. And then I saw that you're teaming back up with Terry Gilliam again, which
Yeah.
which I'm such a big Fisher King fan. I mean, that movie is one of my all-time favorites. So I'm really curious what's gonna happen with the two of you guys. What's it called? Carnival?
Yeah, I can't remember the whole
I probably
title.
hit. Wait. Oh, wait. At the end of the day, at the end of days, maybe.
Have
Yeah.
you seen have you seen Tideland?
Yes, and Tideland.
That's
Thailand
another
messed me up for a little bit.
Yeah, I bet, man. That's
Thailand, you and the open and the house and all that stuff. That's
yeah.
of the Terry. That's I'm gonna be honest. It's the one I probably revisit the least. But what a beautiful movie. What a
Yeah.
beautiful movie.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a fun one. A low, real low budget, but it had chock full with all of Terry's excellence.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see what you guys have conjured up this time as well. That's
See?
Jeff, congrats on getting this out there. I should actually say thank you for finally putting this out there because this is one of my favorite albums that I've heard lately.
Oh, I'm so glad you liked that, Kyle.
Really, really love it. So, thank you for doing that, and thank you for taking the time. It's been a real pleasure and an honor.
My pleasure, my honor. Talk
All
to you
right.
soon.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.